I never meant to fall in love with my straight best friend. That's such a cliché, right? The kind of story you see in movies or read about online, always ending in heartbreak or some miraculous confession that never happens in real life. But here's the thing about clichés. They become clichés because they happen often enough that we all recognize the pattern. And that night, lying in my bed at 2 a.m, listening to Ezra breathe through my phone speaker, I realized I was living inside one of those patterns, and there was absolutely nothing I could do to stop it. It started 3 months earlier, though, if I'm being honest, it probably started the day I met him. Ezra Castellanos. Even his name felt like poetry in my mouth, though I'd never say that out loud. He'd transferred to our marketing firm in September, taking the desk directly across from mine in the open office layout our company loved so much. I remember looking up from my laptop that first morning and seeing him standing there with HR, his dark hair slightly messy, wearing a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He had this easy smile, the kind that made you feel like you'd known him for years, even though you'd never seen him before in your life. My name's Colin, by the way. Pretty ordinary, I know. 28 years old, working in digital marketing, living in a studio apartment that costs too much for what it is. I came out when I was 22, and by now I thought I'd developed pretty good defenses against falling for straight guys. I'd learned to recognize the signs early, to protect myself, to keep that boundary firmly in place. But Ezra slipped past every defense I had, and he did it so naturally I didn't even notice until it was too late. We became friends fast. That's the thing about Ezra. He had this way of making friendship feel effortless. Within a week, we were grabbing lunch together. Within 2 weeks, we were staying late at the office, working on projects side by side, ordering takeout and laughing about terrible client requests. He told me about his ex-girlfriend, about how the breakup 6 months ago had wrecked him, about how he'd moved to the city partly to start fresh. And I told him things too, about being gay, about my own messy relationship history, about how I'd always felt slightly out of place everywhere I went. He never flinched, never got weird. He'd ask questions, genuine ones, about what it was like growing up gay in a small town, about my first relationship, about the gay bars downtown he'd heard about but never been to. His curiosity felt respectful, interested, like he actually wanted to understand my world. And God, that made it so much harder. The phone calls started about 6 weeks after he arrived. He'd call me after work sometimes just to talk. At first, it was about office stuff, venting about our boss or laughing about something that happened during a meeting. But gradually, the conversations got deeper. He'd call me at 9, 10 at night, and we'd talk for hours about everything, about his childhood in Texas, about his complicated relationship with his father, about the dreams he'd given up to take a stable job, and I'd share things I hadn't told anyone, about the loneliness that sometimes crept in late at night, about wondering if I'd ever find someone who really got me. One night in early November, he called me at 11:30. I was already in bed, reading, and I almost didn't answer because it was so late. But I saw his name on the screen and picked up immediately. "Hey," he said, and his voice sounded different. Softer, maybe. "Tired. Were you asleep?" "No, I'm up. What's going on?" There was a pause, and I could hear him moving around, the rustle of fabric, maybe him getting into bed. I don't know. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts tonight. Is that weird? "It's not weird," I told him, and I meant it. My heart was already beating faster, just from hearing that vulnerability in his voice. "Talk to me. What's going on in that head of yours?" And he did. He talked about feeling stuck, about wondering if he'd made the right choices in life, about missing the version of himself who used to write poetry in college before he decided to be practical. He talked about his ex, about how he still dreamed about her sometimes and woke up feeling empty. He talked about loneliness, the specific kind that comes from being surrounded by people, but still feeling fundamentally unseen. I get that, I said quietly. I really do. I know you do, Colin. That's why I called you. We talked until almost 2 in the morning that night, and when we finally said goodbye, I lay in the darkness of my room for a long time, staring at the ceiling, knowing I was in trouble. Because this wasn't just attraction anymore. This was something deeper, more dangerous. This was intimacy. After that, the late-night calls became our thing. 2, 3 times a week, my phone would light up with his name after midnight. We'd talk about everything and nothing. He'd tell me about his day, about the book he was reading, about the song that got stuck in his head. And I'd listen, soaking up every word like I was dying of thirst and he was water. I never told him how I felt. How could I? He was straight, and more importantly, he was my friend, the best friend I'd had in years, maybe ever. I wasn't going to ruin that by confessing feelings he couldn't reciprocate. So I learned to live with the ache in my chest, the way my pulse quickened when he smiled at me across our desks, the way I'd replay our conversations in my head when I couldn't sleep. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in late November, almost Thanksgiving. We'd stayed late at the office working on a presentation for a major client pitch. Around 9, we'd ordered pizza and spread our work across the conference room table, going through slides and arguing good-naturedly about color schemes and font choices. Ezra was in a good mood that night, energized by the work, and I loved watching him like this, animated and passionate, gesturing with his hands as he explained his vision for the campaign. We finally left the office around 11. The streets were cold, that biting November wind that cuts right through your jacket. We walked to the subway together like we always did, our breath making clouds in the air. At the station entrance, Ezra turned to me. "Thanks for staying late. I know it's not your project, but it really helped having you there." "Are you kidding? I wouldn't have missed it. Your ideas are brilliant." He smiled, and even in the harsh fluorescent light of the subway entrance, he looked beautiful. "Get home safe, Colin. You too." I watched him disappear down the stairs to his train, then headed to my own platform. On the ride home, I felt that familiar mixture of happiness and sadness, the bittersweet cocktail of spending time with someone you love who doesn't love you back. Not in the same way. I got home, showered, climbed into bed. It was almost midnight. I picked up my book but couldn't focus on the words. I kept thinking about the way Ezra had looked at me when he thanked me, the warmth in his eyes, and I had to remind myself not to read too much into it. That's what he was like with everyone. Warm, genuine, present. My phone rang at 1:15. I grabbed it immediately, Ezra's name on the screen. "Hey," I answered. "Hey." His voice was rough, like he'd been crying, or maybe like he was trying not to. "I'm sorry, I know it's late." I sat up in bed, instantly alert. "What's wrong? I had this dream about Emma, my ex, and I woke up and felt so, I felt so alone, Colin. Like I'm 29 years old and I'm starting over, and what if this is it? What if I never feel that connected to someone again?" My chest tightened. "You will," I said softly. "I promise you will. You're not alone, Ezra. I know. I'm being dramatic. Can we talk for a while, until I feel better?" "Of course, as long as you need." So we talked. I told him about an article I'd read about how our brains process loneliness, about how it's actually a survival mechanism, our mind's way of telling us we need connection. He told me about the first time he met Emma at a college party, how she'd been wearing this ridiculous sweater with a cat on it, and how he'd fallen for her in about 30 seconds. "Do you believe in that?" he asked. "Love at first sight?" I thought about the day he'd walked into our office, about how something in my chest had shifted the moment I saw him. I think sometimes you meet someone and you just know they're going to matter. Whether that's love or just recognition, I don't know. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, exactly. We kept talking, our conversation drifting from topic to topic the way it always did. He told me about his mom's upcoming visit for Thanksgiving, about his sister's new baby, about how he was thinking of taking up running again. And I told him about my plans to visit my brother, about the complicated relationship I had with my hometown, about the new coffee shop that opened on my corner. His voice started getting slower, softer. The pauses between his sentences grew longer. Around 2:30, I realized he was falling asleep. Ezra, I said gently. The sound was barely a word, heavy with exhaustion. You're falling asleep. You should hang up and get some rest. No, he mumbled. Keep talking. I like your voice. My heart stopped, then started again, beating so hard I was sure he could hear it through the phone. I like your voice. 3 words that probably meant nothing to him, just a sleepy comment from someone drifting off. But to me, they meant everything. Okay, I whispered, I'll keep talking. And I did. I kept my voice low and steady, talking about nothing important, about the book I was reading, about the clouds I'd seen that afternoon that looked like ships, about memories from childhood, about my grandmother's garden, about anything and everything just to keep making sound. His breathing deepened, became regular. I could hear it clearly through the phone, each inhale and exhale, steady and peaceful. He was asleep, fully asleep, and he hadn't hung up. I should have ended the call. That would have been the reasonable thing to do. But I didn't. I lay there in my dark bedroom, my phone pressed to my ear, and I listened to him breathe. It was intimate in a way I'd never experienced before. More intimate than sex, somehow. This unconscious trust, this vulnerability. He was asleep in his bed across the city, and I was lying in mine, and we were connected by this thin thread of technology, and I could hear the sound of him existing in the world. I imagined what he looked like sleeping. Did he curl on his side? Did he sprawl across the mattress? Did he hold a pillow like I did? I pictured his face relaxed, those worry lines between his eyebrows smoothed out, his mouth slightly open. I wondered if he was dreaming, and if so, about what. The minutes passed. 3 a.m., 3:30, 4. I didn't feel tired. I felt hyper-aware, every nerve ending alive, like I was witnessing something sacred. Sometimes he'd shift, and I'd hear the rustle of sheets, a small sound from his throat. Then the breathing would settle again. Around 4:30, he said my name. Colin. It was barely a whisper, still asleep, maybe dreaming. I'm here, I said softly, knowing he couldn't hear me, knowing he was talking in his sleep. But I said it anyway. At 5, the sky outside my window started to lighten, that deep blue that comes before dawn. I was exhausted now, but I didn't want to hang up. I didn't want to break this connection. This was probably the closest I'd ever get to spending the night with him, and I wanted to hold on to it for as long as possible. I must have dozed off somewhere around 5:30 because the next thing I knew, my alarm was going off at 7. I jerked awake, disoriented, and realized my phone was still pressed to my ear. The call was still connected, and Ezra was awake. Colin? His voice was rough with sleep, confused. Are you there? I'm here, I said, my own voice thick. My heart was pounding again, but different now. With something like fear. Were we on the phone all night? Yeah. You fell asleep. I should have hung up. I'm sorry. There was a long pause. I held my breath. You stayed on the line? While I was sleeping, I couldn't read his tone. Couldn't tell if he was upset, weirded out, or something else. Yeah, I said quietly. I'm sorry if that's strange. Another pause. Then, no one's ever done that before. Done what? Stayed. Just to, I don't know, keep me company, I guess. Even while I was asleep, I didn't know what to say to that. My throat felt tight. Colin, he said, and something in his voice made my chest ache. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you stay on the line? This was it. The moment where I could either tell the truth or deflect, protect myself, keep the boundary in place. I closed my eyes. Because I didn't want you to be alone, I said, even in sleep. I didn't want you to be alone. The silence stretched so long, I thought maybe the call had dropped. Then, I need to tell you something. Can I come over before work? My pulse was racing now, anxiety and hope tangled together. Yes, of course. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I spent those 30 minutes in a panic, brushing my teeth, throwing on clothes, trying to make my tiny studio look less like a disaster. My mind was spinning through possibilities. Maybe he was going to tell me the phone thing was too much, that we needed boundaries. Maybe he'd figured out how I felt and was going to let me down gently. Maybe he was going to end our friendship. When the buzzer rang, my hands were shaking. I opened the door, and there he was. He looked tired, his hair uncombed, still in the sweatpants and t-shirt he'd obviously slept in, his coat thrown over them. His eyes met mine, and I saw something there I'd never seen before, something uncertain and scared and hopeful all at once. "Can I come in?" I stepped back, let him into my small space. He stood in the middle of my studio, looking around like he was trying to figure out what to say. "Ezra," I started, but he cut me off. "I've been lying to myself," he said abruptly. "For weeks now, maybe longer. I told myself we were just friends, that this was just what close friendship felt like, that the reason I wanted to talk to you every night was because you're a good listener. I told myself the reason my chest hurt when you smiled at someone else at the office was because I was protective of my friend. I told myself I was straight, that I'd always been straight, that one person couldn't just change everything you thought you knew about yourself. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. But then last night," he continued, his voice shaking slightly, "I fell asleep on the phone with you, and this morning I woke up and realized you'd stayed. You'd listened to me breathe for hours, Colin. Do you know how that made me feel? Do you know what I realized?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. "I realized that I've never felt this safe with anyone. Not with Emma, not with anyone. And I realized that when I picture my future, you're in it. And I realized that maybe the reason I haven't been able to move on from my ex isn't because I'm heartbroken. It's because my heart was already somewhere else, with someone else." He stepped closer to me. I could see the fear in his eyes, but also determination. "I don't know what I am," he said quietly. "I don't know if I'm gay or bi or if it's just you. I don't have it figured out. But I know that I'm falling for you, Colin. And I think maybe I have been since the day we met. And I'm terrified because I don't know how to do this, but I'm more terrified of not trying." The words I'd been holding back for months came tumbling out. "I'm in love with you. I've been in love with you for so long, and I didn't think I could tell you, and I've been trying so hard to just be your friend." He smiled then, that beautiful smile that had undone me from the start. "Can I kiss you, please?" I whispered, and he did. Soft and uncertain at first, then deeper, his hands coming up to cup my face. He tasted like toothpaste and coffee, and kissing him felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. He rested his forehead against mine. "I'm probably going to be terrible at this," he said. "I'm going to be confused and scared, and I'm going to need patience." "I've got patience," I told him. "I've got all the patience in the world." We spent the rest of the morning on my bed, not sleeping, just talking and kissing and talking some more. We were both late to work. We didn't care. That was 4 months ago. We're together now, really together, and it's not always easy. He's still figuring things out, still learning what it means to be in a relationship with a man, still dealing with internalized stuff he didn't know he had. But he's trying, and he's honest, and he loves me. He tells me that now, usually late at night, his voice soft in the darkness of whichever apartment we've ended up in. Sometimes when we're falling asleep, I think about that night, about lying in my bed listening to him breathe through my phone, about how I never imagined that staying on the line could lead to this, to him beside me, warm and real, his breath not coming through a speaker, but right there against my skin. Last week he fell asleep first again. I lay there watching him, his face peaceful, his hand resting on my chest. And I thought about how love sneaks up on you sometimes, how it finds you in late-night phone calls and ordinary office days, how sometimes the person you think you can never have turns out to be the person who was falling for you all along. I leaned over and kissed his forehead gently, not wanting to wake him. He smiled in his sleep, shifted closer, and I stayed awake a little longer, just listening to him breathe, grateful for every single breath.